Welcome back, everyone, to Ask BROJO Anything with myself, Dan Munro, and Mike. Got a couple of questions for you today, so we answer the questions for our BROJO Gold members as a priority, and then we'll try to get to the other questions after that.
So this question was about honesty. Now, this is from one of our members who has been working a lot on developing a sense of honesty and how to apply to his life and social situations. The question he asked was, in general, what is your interpretation of honesty? It was sort of an open question, I think, done on the Facebook group at one point. And I'm just going to read exactly what he wrote, which was, what's your interpretation of honesty? Maybe it's being afraid of asking exactly what someone means or demanding an honest communication. In other words, setting a frame of honesty for the people around you. He has stepped into a happier version of himself from a few months ago since he started coaching with Dan, and being honest, open, and true in setting boundaries, and learning that honesty and boundary setting makes him feel fantastic, and his brain is not that exhausted anymore. I think that's a great share. I think we got a lot to say about honesty. Dan, you and I, ever since the beginning of BROJO, we've had some pretty deep discussions about the importance of honesty in communication and in our social relationships and to ourselves. In that general question, what's your interpretation of honesty? How do you sum that up now?
Okay, so I try to keep it as concise as possible, which is honesty is when what comes out of you, verbal and body language, accurately represents what's going on inside you. Essentially, it's your best attempt to portray the truth as you know it. I think an even easier way to describe it is you know when you're being dishonest. Now, one of the issues I think with the interpretation of honesty is a lot of people have a pretty workable definition of honesty, but it's the definition of dishonesty that's the problem, because they have a lot of stuff in the honesty category that is actually dishonesty. One of the key things is hiding stuff. So they'll say lying is dishonesty if I deliberately portray something as true when I know it's not. They're like, yeah, I don't ever do that, which is actually their first lie, because they probably do at least sometimes. But the dishonesty where you have a strong feeling but you don't let it be shown, you have an opinion and you keep it to yourself, you have a disagreement or a conflicting idea and you give the impression that you don't, that's also lying. That's also dishonesty. It's dishonesty with body language. It's the sin of omission. Now, honesty doesn't mean saying every single thing that comes into your mind, because there's simply not enough space in the world for that. You think faster than you can speak anyway. For somebody to pour every thought out into the world is not so much honesty as it is just unrelenting disrespect of other people's space. So honesty is a bit of an art form. When to do it and what to do it with, and when to hold back and let others have a turn. There's no hard and fast rules that people can follow about this. The one thing I say is there's a thing I call the obvious truth, which is at any given time, there's something in your mind that's arisen, and not only is it true, but it's important. And it's more important than the other stuff swirling around in your mind. And whether or not you express that particular thing when it's your turn to speak next, that determines honesty. And it's quite often that thing that people work around to talk about something else, which is a subtle form of dishonesty. You've got this big thing in your mind, but you don't like how sort of inappropriate or controversial it is. So you find something else to talk about, something else that is true, but it's not the thing that's at the front of your mind. And I think that's the part of honesty that people don't quite nail. It's the most difficult part. So yeah, that's my interpretation of honesty in general.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. The expression outside of what's actually going on inside your head is the fundamental definition we're talking about here. I love some of the discussions that we've had with the bros, particularly in our seminars, in our live seminars about dating and relationships. They come up with some great questions like, should I actually tell this girl whether or not I think she's fat or whatever it happens to be? And it raises some very interesting questions. I think that one of the things that I notice about how I perceive and approach honesty is that I do categorize it a bit. I think of it as uh, honesty of my intentions, what I want in situation, what I expect from someone, my frame, my perceptions about a relationship with someone. Anything that affects this person in front of me, I should be 100% open about. If it affects them, they deserve to know, even if they don't like it. Okay. Um, Whereas honesty of my personal affairs or honesty of my past, there are certain things that aren't really relevant to this person. There isn't a reason for me to share that. It's not going to affect them. So I put that as a lower priority. It's important for me to ask the question, do I feel shame about this? Because then it's affecting me. If I'm hiding it to protect myself because I feel that this is some negative thing, that's a problem I'm going to have to deal with. But when it comes to honesty in my social interactions, I focus on the things that are relevant to this person. I'm not looking to give them every single bit of judgmental thought that came into my head just because it flitted through. There's no value to that. But um, if I'm hiding anything that impacts them, that's doing a disservice to both of us.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of good description of that art form. Is there's a lot of factors you weigh up as to what comes out and what stays in, and the impact it has on you and others is a key factor deciding that. The more impact it's likely to have, the more it should come out, and including the impact of not coming out. If it's going to have a big impact that it doesn't come out, then it should come out. Whereas other things, like I remember we were hosting a workshop about this once, and somebody said, like, well, what if some random person comes up and asks for my PIN code? Well, that's an interesting example. Um, is it lying to say that, to not give them the code? I said, no, honesty would be saying, I don't want to give you the PIN code because that's how you honestly feel. Quite often, being honest about not wanting to be honest is honesty. Say, look, something's come up, but I don't want to tell you about it because I'm scared of how you're going to react. That is actually the truth. You don't have to say the thing that you don't want to put out. You say that you don't want to put it out there. One of the things I wanted to mention was there's honesty and then there's truthfulness, which is honesty combined with accuracy. It's something I'll be talking about a lot in my book that's coming out, The Naked Truth. So there's a lot of people who would consider themselves honest, but really they're just judgmental and they're inconsiderate and they just blurt any fucking thing that comes out into their head. And they don't do any sort of review of its accuracy. They don't check it with reality. They don't see how truthful they're being. They just think, hey, if I speak my mind, that's honesty. And in a sense it is. But what I'd suggest is that the noble goal is truthfulness. When what you say is not only how you truly feel, but what you feel has been, shall we say, influenced by a curious exploration as to what's actually true. Like if I have a judgmental thought pop into my head, first question I've got to ask before I speak that thought is the thought true? Because if it's not, and I express it as if it is, then I'm essentially now being dishonest. Let's say some guy walks past me and he's like this much taller than me, and my brain goes, he's too tall. Who am I to say someone's too tall? What is too tall? Who gave me the power to decide the right height for human beings? Now, if I was to say he's too tall, I'm now lying because I don't have the right to say that I don't have the authority to determine what the right height for something is. Now, if he's about to get onto a roller coaster ride that I'm running that has a height limit and I say you're too tall, that's accurate. But if he's just taller than me and that bums me out, then the real truth is I'm jealous of your height, not you're too tall. And that's going to take a little bit of consideration. And this is why I say it's really an art form. What I'd say is if you're not sure what the right thing is to say it anyway. You'll learn. Don't get stuck in overthinking. If it takes you more than 5 seconds to think of what to say, just start talking. Get it wrong, and then you'll learn from that. But there is more to honesty than just speaking your mind. You have to also analyze your mind for how accurate it is.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I notice is that when it comes to honesty, I think of it as, there's honesty of emotion, honesty of how I feel, and there's honesty of facts and what I think. And those are all separate things. I have not yet found a place where I should hide how I feel. For me, 100% of the time, with anyone, anywhere, I should be 100% honest there. And that's the most important thing. The example you gave with the PIN code, that's the first answer. No, I don't feel like giving you my PIN code. That doesn't really sound like a smart idea to me. I can't even tell you why. Or the guy walking by who's too tall. All you really know is, I feel like he's pretty much too tall. I might be too short, but I feel like he's too tall. That I know. That's a truth. The objective truth is something we rarely ever really fully know. Is he too tall? Well, that depends, And I find that's quite helpful. So when it comes to expressing what's going on for me in the world at this moment to someone I'm standing in front of, how I feel is there's no question as to whether or not that's accurate. I can always share that, and it does wonders in building connection and helping them understand whether we can connect. The rest of it, we're figuring out together as we go. What do we want? Where are we going with this? What's true? What are we going to do today? What do we like or dislike? That's all negotiable. And it's part of the process of building a relationship.
I love that, but that is really, you just outlined the central thesis for that next book coming out, which is the only thing you can be truly accurate about is your inner experience. It's the only thing you know for sure, or it's the most sure you can be about anything. So rather than speak about that truth, you've got to speak about your truth, and your language has to reflect that. I feel, I think, I believe, I got the impression, I made an assumption that. These kind of presuppositions, I think they're called, these little like intros to you expressing something, serve as a great training tool for identifying how to speak in a way that's always about your own experience. The difference between you're too tall and I judge you as being too tall is astronomical. It's a huge difference. One, I'm saying your height is a factual thing of reality, and I'm just commenting on it. And then the other, I'm saying I have a view and a perspective, and I don't know if it's right or not. It just seems right to me. Now, either way can still cause conflicts, but it makes such a big difference for connection. Like, you made me angry versus, when you do that, I get myself angry. Which is the truth. They don't make you anything. They're not like a brain surgeon in there with probes, like pushing buttons. Your brain made you angry. There's a responsibility to honesty. Whatever I think of the world and however I act is me causing it. I am the prime mover here, and I must speak as such. And you can see conflict arising when that doesn't happen. I was just talking to Mike before we started recording, I think. Just one of my videos just blew up with a lot of, shall we say, negative feedback. Not necessarily bad feedback. It's negative. And I realized I'd made the critical mistake in that video where I talked of stuff as fact rather than just making sure I'm putting like, this is my opinion, I believe. Because I don't know if what I'm saying is fact in that particular video. This is different to say the scientific study clearly suggests that blah, blah, blah. This is just me putting opinion out there as if it's the truth. And I've been called out on it, and rightly so. But it caused quite a conflict for people. Whereas other videos might still cause conflict, but if I'm saying, look, this is just what I think, I'm happy to be wrong. This is the way I see it. This is my belief based on my experience and my anecdotal evidence and so on. You can't say, well, he's claiming scientific fact, because he's not. He's just calling a thing. The question the guy put through, he's sent through other ones before, where I think the theme is honesty and respect, like honesty causing conflict and confrontation with people. To understand, confrontation is going to stay to a minimum level if you keep owning the way you put out the truth. You keep making sure that you're never putting it on them, you're never stating anything as objective. It's always subjective. I feel like this when I see you do that, not you made me feel, or not you're doing that wrong as I judge you as doing that wrong. It makes a big difference.
Absolutely. It's all about stating, how I feel and what am I okay with. If you're always clear about that with the people around you, it's very easy for them to negotiate that frame and those boundaries. Whereas if you say, if you're judgmental about them, I don't like that you do that. I don't like that you make me feel this way. That was wrong. That's absolutely incorrect, first of all, and it also puts all the burden on them. You're now calling them out for something that they didn't intend to make you feel that way. Even if they did, they haven't necessarily accepted responsibility for that. The way for you to negotiate that is simply to make it clear where you are and what you want in that situation. And then it's very, very clear whether or not they are going to respect you.
And that's the key, isn't it? The honesty polarizes their reaction. You make your best attempt to be, as I call in the book, powerfully honest, to be as accurate and kind of bold and responsible as possible with your honesty. If they react really badly to that, you've got an idea of how right you are for each other. Not necessarily a full idea yet. This thing might need to be fleshed out. Most confrontations get worse before they get better. There's always that little hump you've got to get over. People misunderstand each other and get into their little self-pity parties and try to win and stuff. Forget that they're friends briefly. But yeah, I think I've had some people who get quite academic about this or philosophical, and they say, well, what is the truth really? I said, rather than going down that rabbit hole, just ask yourself, am I being dishonest? And you'll know the answer. This isn't a discussion with somebody else. This is just an internal analysis. You know when you're holding something back. You know when how you represent yourself isn't accurately how you feel. You know when you're trying to people please or trying to moderate a situation in your favor, as opposed to just putting the truth out there and letting people scrap over it. You know when you're doing it. You can't lie to yourself at the core level. Well, actually, that's not true. You can, but you don't get away with it for very long. I always say the first lie is that we tell ourselves we're good people. We tell ourselves we're honest. I'd say if nothing else, please cancel out that first lie. Assume, I even do it still to this day, assume that not only are you capable of dishonesty, you will at some point today be dishonest. It's going to slip out. You might not even see it happen because you'll lie to yourself about it before it happens. Like the way nice guys convince themselves that they don't mind something that bothers them so that they don't have to confront it. There'll be this process. You'll notice the internal lie. I think you mentioned that before, Mike. Being honest with yourself is actually the hardest part of all of this. You'll notice there's this bit where you have a little story in your head as you're trying to take what was originally true and manipulate and mold it so that you can actually put it out there without anything bad happening to you. You try to convince yourself it's something else so that you can actually talk about it. That's the bit that needs to be intervened with first and foremost. The rest, being honest with other people, is actually simpler than that, I think.
Absolutely. Great questions today. We really appreciate them, guys. Keep them coming. I think that about wraps it up for this week.
Absolutely. Yeah, keep those questions coming in, and we'll try and tackle them at least once a week or once every other week, maybe. Mike, thanks again, and we'll see you all next time. Cheers.
See you soon.